Our meeting is adjourned.
We'll take a 10-minute break and then do our workshop right here, so at 10:30.
We'll get it. Nice job.
You did great.
help.
I get to do whatever.
Oh, I kind of.
I'd like to call the workshop this morning to order. It's regarding workforce diversity, performance metrics, parks and recreation, property management, and public works and public pathways efforts. Boy, that's a mouthful. Anyhow,
On the screen.
before Yes. Anyhow, I just wanted to, before we start, I just wanted to kind of put this into perspective as far as what we're doing. It's another department is what we're looking at here, the metrics that were part of the budget process. And because especially with the two new commissioners, you weren't here for the budget process, it makes it a little difficult. We are really digging deep into a number of issues. We will have each of the departments coming back for even a more full conversation about all of the metrics. But today it's going to focus, just as we did last week, focus on workforce diversity. And so, but this is just one of the measures, and I just want to put that into perspective so that you understand that they will be back to us, but we wanted to have special workshops that really delve deep into the diversity issue. So they will highlight today the connections to work with the community as part of the Workforce Equity Action Circle we heard about this morning that is doing great work. And that started during COVID-19 and connected the work of several EGCI departments. And so, again, this is part of the metrics, the workshop, the takeaways, the efforts to advance collaboration with Workforce Solutions. And so I will turn it over to, I'm not sure who I'm supposed to turn it over to, if it's to Joanna. All right, she's right here. So I'll turn it over to Joanna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we could move to slide 2, please. I just want to highlight the speakers we have this morning. We have the directors of Parks and Recreation, Property Management, and Public Works, as well as Workforce Solutions with us at the table this morning. We're going to focus first on the workforce diversity performance metrics across these departments, and then I'm going to turn it over to Director Ling Becker, and we will have Christy Cobbs and Elijah Norris Holliday join us to talk about, in more detail, about how we're leveraging Workforce Solutions and our public pathways efforts. Next slide, please. So our goals today is to share with the board the workforce diversity performance metrics that were part of the budget process. For our new commissioners, we began this process in October. We presented library department performance measures to the board in October. This then is the second time EGCI is in front of the board with our workforce diversity measures. We wanted to bring these departments together in particular because they have been working collectively and intentionally and in partnership with Workforce Solutions on improving the metrics in this space. And so we wanted to have an opportunity to talk together and across all three rather than doing it department by department. You're going to hear today about strategies and efforts that this collective team has committed to with the aim of improving these measures. These departments have also been actively engaging with the Workforce Equity Action Circle we've talked about this morning and engaging with community members for strategies and community priorities. Next slide, please. As the other way. There we go. Oh, perfect. I'm sorry. That was me, not you. Totally my bad. All right. As we look at the new performance measures, the workshop today, as the chair mentioned, is going to focus here on Measure 1, aligning talent attraction, retention, and promotion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Jean Kruger.
Thank you, Deputy County Manager Berg, and good morning, commissioners and staff. I'm going to begin today in talking about one of the three metrics that our departments will talk about today. And I'll take the first measure and then turn it over to Brian and Mark for the second and third measure. We'll talk first specifically about the measure, and then after the three measures, we'll share more about the specific work we've been doing and the improvements that we believe are coming forth because of that work. But first we'll talk about this measure. On this slide is really presenting the percent of our department staffs who are racially and ethnically diverse and or American Indian. And I should note on this slide and the next two, you'll see the individual bar graphs for each of our three departments. and the percent, the diversity within each of our departments. You have the materials, so we've got the blue for Parks and Rec, orange for Property Management, and the red for Public Works. This particular statistic is one that HR has been tracking for several years, and the actuals through 2021 are what are currently available to us from HR. We have been intentional over the years in reviewing this data and using it to plan our path forward as we've been looking at our departments and filling our open positions, whether that be with external hires or promotions from within. For 2022 and 23 estimates that are shown here, you'll note that there is an increase in all three departments from the 2021 actuals. It might not seem like those are huge increases, but as you'll hear from us, there are many challenges in our particular areas in making significant strides to improve these numbers. But we are committed to this, and our focus on our processes and changed processes are what gives us confidence that we can deliver these improvements, but also very conscious of the challenges that are present in the labor market today. For us in property management, just as an example, in the 2022 year and continuing into 23, we have 6 job postings in property management. That might not seem like many, but within our department, that's a lot. And for each of those, or for many of those postings, we actually have several vacancies. So we right now are at a 15% vacancy, which is like unheard of and very challenging. But for those 6 postings that we have had open and been tracking, again, in this tight labor market, I will say we only had 70 applications, which is not a lot. 10, 11 on average for each position compared to a few years ago is a quite small pool of candidates. Within those 70 applicants for the positions that we've opened, we saw 33% diversity of applicants. Again, this is just the property management positions, so that's slightly higher diversity than what we currently have in our department, but not by much. But in both cases, obviously less than the community diversity overall, and certainly less than what we're striving for as a county and as a department within the county. So we know that we have lots of work to do, and you'll hear more about it, in encouraging people, particularly young people, to consider careers not only in property management, but Parks and Rec, Public Works, because in many ways we draw, if you will, from the same, or have drawn from the same pool of labor, and we need to do as much as we can to encourage and promote this as careers, professions, jobs for more people. With that, I will turn it to Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can't tell what the voices in my head are versus the voices. So my job is to go through, as we look at formal leaders, and we think about what is the percentage of our formal leaders that are represented by diverse populations. There are a few things that I'll point out on this slide. So as we think about formal leader, we've defined it as basically anybody who's got supervisory responsibilities and above. And for the county, generally, I think our numbers are in the high 20% range, 27, 29%. And for our parts of the organization, we've been trending better, but we have ground to make up here. I can echo some of Jean's comments in terms of the types of positions that we posted, and I can certainly corroborate some of the experiences that she's referenced here about. It's been true even of the positions that we have posted, which have had formal leadership responsibilities. It's been a really kind of a strange mix of how things have borne out. I recently had a posting where I had 11 candidates, offered interviews to 5. Only 3 responded, and then one of the third candidate dropped out. And so that's not an uncommon experience. There are other positions that we posted that would be characterized as formal leaders, which have been more, in one instance, we had a relatively small pool and didn't end up getting to candidates in time. We had to repost, and the second time we had a very diverse pool, highly qualified candidates, same position, same approach to advertising, same everything, just got a very different candidate pool within a few months of each other. And so it does seem to be that circumstances can dictate that, and I'll say that we have, I'll speak for all of us in saying that we've been working hard to try to garner more diverse pools of candidates, and whether that's been working our networks or working with community, working with the indefatigable Ling Becker, or with trying to develop talent within our own workforce, it really does bear out from one to the next. It's been challenging. And I'll say one thing about this slide. You'll notice that it lists Public Works in 2021 as 0, and I'll say I don't know that that really reflects what I see. And there are probably some elements of that I want to dig into. I haven't had the chance to dig into the depth of that data at this point, but I will work with our partners to understand better what's at the root of that. I will say that there has been a substantial emphasis placed within the department, and I'll say that for Public Works, and I think I can say that both for Property and Parks, that there has been substantial emphasis placed on trying to develop better candidate pools that more reflect our community. And so you see that borne out in 22 and 23. Along those lines, in conversation with folks who are providing the data and in conversation amongst us, I think that one of the things we see that is potentially challenging here is that it does seem like, for whatever reason, some folks are choosing not to designate. And so how we reflect that in our data, and because I do think it matters that when we talk about how our parts of the organization reflect community and what those numbers are, that really does matter to how people feel about where they fit in the world and how the work that we're doing. And so that'll be something that we'll have to work with others to make sure we have good data. And then I think we're on to Mark.
Certainly. Okay. Well, in this slide, it's taking a look at the annual turnover rate. So for our 3 departments, annual turnover, healthy annual turnover rate is approximately 10 to 15%. Turnover is according to benchmark organizations, what's kind of a healthy metric there for turnover. For Ramsey County as a whole, over the past 10-year period, we've experienced a 10% turnover rate. But in 2021, it was 15%, so slightly higher than what we see in normal. So you can see our 3 departments, and we kind of all fall within that 10 to 15% range for turnover. I think something that you don't really see in this metric, and we've talked about this as a team and need to pull in our partners at HR as well, is to kind of talk about what that means exactly, because turnover could mean that employees are being promoted to other opportunities elsewhere. It could mean that they're being promoted to other departments within Ramsey County. It could mean that they're taking lateral moves to other positions, and that all counts as turnover. So I think just to look at the statistic alone, it isn't necessarily like a good thing or bad thing. There may be a lot baked into those numbers. So I think that's our work to build out that measure more completely. And I think there's opportunity there as well. As I look at Parks right now, has a number of vacancies. We had a good handful of vacancies earlier this year, and that's why we've been able to increase almost double the percent of staff who are racially diverse this past year because of those opportunities in turnover. So that's a way to look at it as well, to kind of put some of these strategies in action as we have these vacancies. The next slide, just wanting to touch on specifically the Equity Action Circle work. So as you're well aware, COVID-19 presented a number of, or shed light on a number of disparities with racially and ethnically diverse residents, including employment. COVID highlighted this need to have a racially diverse community members who are empowered to help us in this work, and that was the formation of the Equity Action Circle. And the members of the Equity Action Circle helped us develop strategies to address some of these disparities, including gaps in employment, and they identified parks, public works, and property management as departments for a lot of opportunity with increasing our racial diversity within our staffs. We've met routinely with the Equity Action Circle members, along with representatives like Prince Corbett and our other racial and health equity administrators. Antonio Montez, we've been working with those groups to take in their advice, to put in action plans based on their advice, to work on a work plan, to kind of formalize and operationalize how we're going to go about increasing our racial diversity. And even things like just sharing job postings among that network, and they can share with their networks, I think has been helpful in just getting the word out, because I think we know that talented people exist in all walks of life and that we're trying to attract them to Ramsey County. We just have sometimes a struggle connecting with the audience, so utilizing those networks to connect with that audience. And that's been helpful for ongoing relationships and future support as well as accountability. I think needing to come into that meeting once a month and report on your progress and what you're doing to operationalize that work has been beneficial as well, to just have that public accountability. Back to Jean.
Thank you. And as I mentioned earlier, our collective 3 departments, we have really been giving this thought for a number of years and believe we have taken quite a number of measures to drive forward in not only bringing on board candidates, but in that everything from the initial outreach, recruiting, hiring process, the whole gamut. We've been doing this for a number of years, and certainly long before the recently established HR talent acquisition teams have come into play. And we're definitely looking forward to the ongoing collaboration with them, because honestly, there is a lot of work involved in every given posting, and certainly having greater expertise in that arena than exists in our own departments is something we look forward to. I'm going to specifically talk about some of the outreach and recruitment steps or measures that we've been taking. We used to think it was enough just to get that posting out there on NeoGov and wait for the applicants to flood in. I think we were all sadly disappointed that that just doesn't work. But over the years, it was eye-opening to me to realize, historically at least, how much of that came up to the departments to promote our open positions. That staff in our departments was having to determine where and how to get the word out there, needing to make those contacts and connections, and we did, getting information out to the local colleges, utilizing boards, poster boards at libraries, supermarkets, wherever we thought someone might happen to see a posting, utilizing other governmental resources like the Minnesota counties or through the League of Cities, getting it out to union job boards, partnering with the Among American Partnership and seeing what they might be able to distribute and post on our behalves. The Equity Action Circle members, getting it out to them, having them share it in communities. Those are all in addition to the things you immediately think of, as I mentioned, like NeoGov or getting something out on LinkedIn or promoting it in social media. And then depending upon which of our departments and the professional and or trade associations that we interact with, getting it out to them. In the case of property management, getting it out to places like to BOMA, the Building Owners and Managers Association, and getting it on their job board. or the Minnesota Cities and Counties Facilities Management Association job boards. But all of this takes a lot of time and has had to be done by departments. So again, we're looking forward to, in essence, sharing some of that work and getting the benefit of staffing within the talent acquisition teams. Who knew, we can actually pay for ads on certain sites and get them to pop up more frequently. I mean, this is not our forte in property management, but in certain instances, we will do that. And again, looking for those resources to continue to help us get the word out as best we can. We've also, in large credit to Ling Workforce Solutions, really participated in many more community outreach events, career fairs, community events. Again, just trying to continue to educate, particularly our young people, on what might be available within our specific departments for employment. I'd also just like to mention that we do work diligently with our existing staff to ensure that they have the training and understand the promotional options that may be available to them, such that they can grow and develop and become candidates for those positions as well. As Mark pointed out, it might be a double count in some ways in turnover as a negative, but it's a positive to promote from within where that makes the most sense. And now I'll turn it to Mark to talk more about other barriers.
Sure. Yeah, working through the process of removing barriers to hiring. So unfortunately, when applying through a public entity, it can be quite daunting. And for a lot of people, that can be a turnoff to them and prevent them from even going through the application process. So I think we've done a lot of work collectively to try to help remove those barriers or lessen those barriers. And I think we've learned a lot and have had some success from that. So some of those reduction barriers include just making the application process easier, reducing minimum qualifications, and reducing the number of supplemental questions. I think about a lot of positions within Parks and Recreation, Property Management, and Public Works with maintenance employees, for example, which are a large portion of our workforce. And it doesn't really tell me a lot of how they're going to perform their job if we ask them to write several-page essays. I like to see what they can do out in the field and what their experience and aptitude is there. But our past practices have been, how well do you write an essay? So it's something that really kind of taking the right look for the right position, I think it helps us a great deal. So removing some of those things and getting some opportunities to actually talk to people about what they do in the field, to maybe even do some hands-on kind of demonstration, I think that's really helped. Increasing the racial diversity and gender diversity in our interview panels. So that's something that was a recommendation also from the Equity Action Circle. And we've had, again, members from our racial and health equity administrators. Antonio Montez, he participated in a number of interviews. That was really helpful to have his perspective. Brought a lot of rich kind of ideas and focus, I think, to the conversation. We had members from our parks Park Commission that participated, and that was really helpful as well, just that citizen kind of advisory standpoint. And I think it just made for a much better process, improved, and really ultimately ended up having us, I think, take strong consideration of candidates that might not have been considered strongly in the past, and to offer positions to those candidates. We also went through banding for candidates, so that was a new term to me coming here, and that was basically if you go through the interview process, you're given a select number of candidates that you can interview. Well, if you band the list, you're able to get a larger number of candidates. So instead of here's your top 10 and you can't interview any further into the pile, you could go down and maybe you can interview 20 candidates or 30 candidates. And so it's, some more effort to go through and conduct more interviews, but a lot of people who come into the organization stay for a significant number of years, and it's worth that investment as well as that reduction of barriers. I think we saw a lot of times where racially diverse candidates, maybe they didn't make the top 10 and then got into the room and had great attitudes, aptitude, ability, and once that barrier to getting into the actual interview was removed, then their talent's shown, and we were able to offer opportunities to some really talented people. So these challenges made a big difference into, who gets in the interview process, who's participating in the interview process, and ultimately who are offered jobs. And I'd say for Parks and Recreation, we're definitely a much better workforce for it, for having those racially diverse candidates and employees now, and able to move our organization forward in a number of ways. So those are some key takeaways from those measures, and on to workforce solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I have a lot of passion projects, but this is certainly one of them high up on the list. Workforce Solutions sits in a really unique place in supporting the organization here. We really do support departments and the organization as though we would support all other employers in Ramsey County, whether it's 3M, Ecolab, small businesses along University, companies in White Bear Lake or Vadnais Heights, wherever, right, that are trying to diversify. So we really put that same lens on ourselves as we do when we meet with our business community in this work. And I would say that as we continue to talk about building a more equitable and inclusive economy, we cannot expect our employers to do this while we let ourselves stay behind as a large employer in the county. And so that is really the challenge for us, to be that leader as we talk about an inclusive economy, knowing the good jobs that are available in this county and the rich lived experience of people who live here, who can share in our work. And so that's why this is so important for a multitude of reasons, but that is actually a really key reason, is we have to lead here and not follow. These departments have been very intentional. I think you've heard the word intentional. It's a lot of work. Work shouldn't scare us in doing this, because we're creating more equitable outcomes. I think if I ever write a book someday, it might be on this theory of change around the steering wheel method, so you can hear it all here. I think this really applies here. We have a big wheel to turn in terms of systems change here, and unfortunately none of us have the ability to hold on to just one of the wheels that gets to move the whole thing. Each of us holds a little different parts of it. Some of us hold a bigger wheel. I will say, in the terms of Workforce Solutions or HR, we hold some of the bigger wheels to help and support, but these departments are holding onto their wheels too, right? And so, and you as commissioners have held onto yours by committing to public pathway funding, supporting our public pathway leadership, supporting the role of Noe Gates and HR, right? So there's a lot of things that have to turn in the same direction, though we all have different influences into those impacts. And so, Jean and Mark both mentioned the importance of youth and young adults. I mean, it is absolutely critical. Thank you again, Commissioner Fretham, for joining us out at the parks. But when we partnered with Tree Trust and Parks, that's the beauty of those kind of partnerships, right? Young people were building a stairway at parks, and they came from all throughout suburban Ramsey County, and they were extremely diverse, and we partnered with a community-based organization. We're trying to do more of that. We do that with a variety of employers, but again, we have to do it with ourselves because we are an important employer. It often, is our first go-to where, we talk about the disparities and barriers to upward mobility is all around economic and wealth disparities. And that's certainly true. I'll be the first to, sign on to that as well. But I think the one thing I'd like to lift up today as we kind of round out our conversation is the disparity around social capital and networks that many of our Black, Indigenous, and racially and ethnically diverse communities lack. In particular, our youth and young adults, through the pandemic, have had the most impacts around long-term unemployment, and they've experienced tremendous school disruption. And why that's important is that that's how you do career exploration, and that's why with your American Rescue Plan investments, we're trying to double down on those partnerships with schools and with community to ensure that those those years aren't lost permanently for many young people in our community. It's our job to share those opportunities, both reaching in, but also reaching out and bringing young people in. Almost imagine it like a revolving door. We have to have it go all ways. And this is the work that we're talking about here today. We need a strong trusted messenger system. Really, young people don't know what they don't know. And today, Brian and I were talking about, I'm gonna get him hooked up with a bunch of the football coaches in Ramsey County at some of the state schools. Those people are the ones tapping on people's shoulders, telling them about what they should do next. They're the trusted folks in young people's lives. And it's the teachers. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be bringing 10 teachers here to join a board meeting with you all. They're St. Paul Public School teachers that are doing an externship with Workforce Solutions, and they're also going to be meeting with these departments and others that want to join us. You know, I think the big thing is Workforce Solutions is willing to help any employer, just like we do out in the community, but we expect a certain level of commitment on behalf of that other partner, right? And because there are so many people to help, and so having that accountability is really, really important on both sides. If you've never met anyone who works in government, you will certainly not know what government does, and that's certainly true for our diverse community. I'll just take a moment to share with you my personal story. Kind of dates me, but in 1993, I started as an intern in my local city hall. I was fresh out of high school, just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. This was a fairly big step because just a couple of years before, I literally helped my dad, translate his way through his naturalization test. So how would he have ever been able to tell me what a career in government would be? He didn't even know what a government really was in the United States at that time, right? And so the powerful people that really impacted my work was certainly, the person who hired me, which I'm grateful for. But it was a lot of other things. It was the administrative assistant who was always really nice to me when I was in the office. It was the other people who would pop by and invited me. It was the project that they gave me that made me feel important and yet was manageable enough for me to do, but I also was able to present to the city council the results. And some of those things actually still exist in the city. There was the City of Eden Prairie, but it was their study on how to use their facilities. But, I remember that very well. So, just as an antidote, right? Like, how are you gonna know those things if you don't know those things? And I think this is the beauty about what we're talking about doing here is that these projects that we're talking about, I love, my other colleagues and, throughout the county who care about this. They do. Many of them do. But we have to push this down into the vast array of this organization because it's everybody's job to make sure this is a welcoming place to work. And it's the supervisors that actually make a big impact, right, on young people. And so for the community, as part of our ARPA funding, we are launching a series of supervisory trainings, not just for Ramsey County, but they're actually available for any employer in Ramsey County, and those will be available starting in March for the community. And so we're turning all those dials, right? I don't have a silver bullet for all of this, and neither do any of us here, and probably no one does. But it's moving a lot of things collectively to say that we're going to be really intentional. We're going to put energy, resources, time, and more work toward doing these things. And so some of the other things that we've continued to do is making sure that we're exploring apprenticeship opportunities and also bringing people through not only at the entry level, but at different levels of the organization. And there's some pathway programs that do that. In terms of apprenticeship, it really is a good challenge for us to look at our barriers to hiring and think about, can we actually bring someone in and then work with them on on-the-job training so that they can get the skills they need while they're already working with us. And that's something that we believe in once an employee has sort of met some of those benchmarks and in our professional development efforts and our tuition reimbursement, but we should be pushing that further down the continuum when young people don't have access to the same things. Workforce Solutions actually trains about 100 folks a year in CDL. You know that that's a really in high demand, and we've been trying to work with folks to figure out how we can make sure those are the folks that we are making sure we're hiring, because ultimately there's also the distinction that there's a difference between a job and a career. And when people get a CDL, it's great that they could be kind of doing the over-the-road work, but we'd rather have them have a job in the county where they're getting sustained benefits, some job security, right, and those benefits of health benefits and other things. And so not all jobs are the same, and we're able to sort of be that employer of choice as a large employer. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is, your investments in the American Rescue Plan. I look forward to coming back and sharing all of the things that are happening in the community around that, but two that really align with this work is our investment in the Driver's License Academy. Driver's license needs in terms of the postings that we're seeing around the county is increasing substantially. And we have many jobs in the county that actually require you to have a driver's license. Maybe some that should go away. I think we can talk about that. But for others, if you need that, you actually don't need a car or insurance. So we just need to help you. We have the vehicle and we have the insurance. We just need to make sure that that's not a barrier for you to applying if all else is in place for you to work for us. And so really excited to highlight the Public Sector Academy. We could not have done this project without the support of your investment, but also our community-based partner, which Elijah is going to, Norris Holiday is going to talk in a moment from Project Restore, but Noe Gates and her role in HR. It's been really, it takes all of us to sort of do these team projects. And then I'm going to turn it over also to Christy Cobbs, who's helped lead the project. She's a planner in Workforce Solutions. So, thanks. I'm going to go up there. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Ling. So the Public Sector Academy actually launched prior to the pandemic and restarted this fall with the American Rescue Plan investments. And so really what the goal of this academy is to expose young people to public sector opportunities. As Ling said, if you don't know anyone that works in the government, it's really hard to know what the government does. And so this is an opportunity to expose young folks to just what jobs are in the county. Even as a planner supporting this, as I was talking to a lot of the public sector interns about what they were doing on a day-to-day basis, I was like, wow, I didn't even know the county did that myself, And so I think that was a really important opportunity. And then one of the big things, as Ling mentioned, is getting to work is one thing, but being able to stay at work is another. And so we know that young adults have a lot of barriers that keep them from getting to work. And so this Public Sector Academy, we partnered with Project Restore MN, and they did a lot of the support in the community to make sure that young folks had proper work attire, made sure that they had transportation to get to the various sites within the county. And then, as Ling said, really a lot of support from Noe. I was so grateful in my planning role for Noe because she did all of the HR background stuff, which was really intensive for our young folks. And then again, this partnership for public sector, we worked with the departments that you see here, so Parks and Rec, Property Management, Public Works, and the Emergency Communication Center. The interns rotated through each of those departments for 2 weeks at a time, and the department-specific learning was what are the positions within those departments, what is a job in Public Works, what would you do, some of the minimum qualifications that we talked about. Noe did a lot of work specifically around how do you take your work experience and make sure that it fits within the within what the minimum qualifications were. And then, again, we recognize that much of this success is because of Project Restore. So all of the interns that started completed the program, which as someone who's worked in youth development for most of my life, you don't typically see 100% successful completion. And again, I would say a lot of that had to do with the wraparound support that young folks received. We are starting a new cohort at the end of February. The posting is currently posted right now. We're looking for young folks 18 to 24. What will be different with this new cohort is that we've added 4 City of St. Paul departments, so we will actually double the number of young people we're working with and have them split between Ramsey County and St. Paul departments. And I would say, again, all of our interns that started that wanted an internship are currently still doing an extended internship with the county right now. And a lot of that time, again, is to do really in-depth exposure into area that they were particularly interested in, and really working with staff there on how do they get the minimum qualifications, what sort of support can they get so when permanent positions come up that they are qualified for those positions. I am now going to turn it over to Elijah.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Director Becker. My name is Elijah Norris Holiday, and I'm going to provide a little bit of context before I get into what we do. And so I spent the majority of my life here in St. Paul. I grew up on the west side of St. Paul, but also spent a couple years out in White Bear Lake, so suburban Ramsey County. And, it's a blessing to be able to provide the support for these 7 interns and for the more interns that we're going to have coming on board for the second group. Because I did not have this opportunity afforded to me when I was graduating from Como Park Senior High School. I was one of those kids that wasn't the best high school student. I was somewhat of a rebellious teenager and young adult. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do, but my dad gave me 2 options because I wasn't just going to sit on his couch, right? So I'm going to go to the military or I'm going to go to college. And I figured, well, I already have a problem with authority. I'm not going to go to the military. I probably won't work out too well for me. So I decided to apply to Winona State University. I networked when I was in high school. I'd always done that well. And so I had good ties with the inclusion diversity officer at Winona State. He ended up giving me a scholarship. I had a 2.6 GPA. Don't know how I got a scholarship to go there, but I did. And I went to Winona. Had no idea what I wanted to study. Figured I liked helping people. Was pretty good at natural sciences. So I said, why not? I'll take a stab at going to nursing school. And so first 2 years, I was going through the nursing program, did really well with that, and then just figured out, I don't see myself being a nurse for the rest of my life. Yes, I like working with people. Yes, I like health sciences, but I don't see this being my career. And so I changed my major actually twice and finally landed on what my passion is, which is public administration and political science, which relates to the work that I'm doing now. And I say all that to say, had I had an opportunity like this, I would have had more options, right? Instead of military and college, I could have figured something else out by doing an internship experience, getting a better understanding of my skill sets, what I want to do with my life, and I could have, figured out earlier when I went to college that I could have just did public administration and political science out the start. And so I'm really grateful to be a part of this process, to be able to provide the wraparound support services, the mentorship support services, and then the supplemental education that we provide for the young folks on Fridays, which is around professional development, personal development, and financial literacy. And so Christy touched on some of the things that we provided for wraparound support, so I'll just elaborate a little briefly on that. So we provided bus cards for young folks, Target gift cards. We've helped young people secure clothes to show up for their internship. Because that was a barrier and obstacle for a lot of young folks. They didn't have the professional attire that they needed, or they didn't have the type of equipment that they needed to show up to actually do the job. And so we were able to purchase safety boots for them, any other equipment that they needed that came out of our budget, we were able to provide that. So no obstacle for them. We also were able to help young people with bills that they had. It's hard to focus on an internship when you're getting paid a little bit over $15 an hour, but you have significant bills coming in because these are young adults with real responsibilities. So we're able to help supplement some of that and pay for some of those bills that they needed. So phone bills, energy bills, whatever they needed support with, we were able to provide that. And the mentorship piece. So we hired 2 mentors to help them throughout this process. So I'm not going to take all the credit for the work. I had a team of great people around me, a wonderful administrative assistant, Olivia, who works with me in everything that we do, but also 2 great mentors that were able to provide additional support to our interns, one-on-one support, talking them through things, helping them communicate with their bosses and their supervisors. So I think that was really important and significant to have that extra person and that extra support throughout this process. And then lastly, we were able to provide them with professional and personal development, because how we show up to do what we do is just as important as to how we do what we do, right? And so teaching them how to put their best foot forward, in the words of Ms. J, how to put their best foot forward, lead with confidence, right, and really step into their potential and who they are as young people. And so they were able to get that etiquette training with Ms. J on Fridays. They went through 4 sessions. And they also were able to actually have the opportunity to receive financial literacy through a certified public accountant, also a real estate agent, Obed, Jean Batiste, and then also Aiken Major, who's our accountant. He does all of our books, but he's also a financial advisor as well. So they went through 4 weeks of training with that as well. Got to ask questions around budgeting, how to manage credit, how to save money, how to start off investing. We debunked a lot of myths that you don't have to wait until you're 45 with a 6-figure salary to start investing, right? There's things that we can do right now to tuck a few dollars away for our next egg. And so they got to ask those questions. They got to get that training. And I think it made a difference. As Christy noted, we had all 7 interns make it through the process, which is impressive. That was a 100% completion rate. I'm very competitive. I'm going to go for 100% the next group as well. I'm not going to change the model. We're going to continue to do what we have to do. And lastly, I'm just going to say I'm grateful for the partnership with Ling Becker. We've worked together on several projects. This one was very significant to me as well, because I want young folks to get access to jobs, right? I want young folks to not only get access to jobs, but also to careers that's going to pay them a livable wage so they can live a successful life. And all this is timely. It's significant as we just got back from the national holiday commemorating the life, legacy, and contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King, who was a fierce advocate for racial justice, but also was a fierce advocate for economic justice, right? Expanding job opportunities, giving young people and adults from our communities the opportunity to live a life that we know that they can live, right, and that we want them to live. And so I'm grateful again. I'm going to stop talking now because we have Miri Burns here, who is actually one of our interns that made it through the process, and he's now doing an extended internship with Public Works, I believe. Property management. Sorry, property management. So I'll turn it over to Amiri.
It's only a matter of time.
My name is Mary Burns. I'm an intern with the Young Adult Career Academy. A little background. I grew up on the east side of St. Paul. Went to Harding High School. Graduated in 2019. Ended up moving to Houston. Went to Houston Community College. That didn't really work out, mainly just because of COVID. And the online classes were just difficult. I'm a very hands-on person and didn't work out. And then due to some unfortunate events, I had to move back to Minnesota. I moved back to do carpentry, but that didn't work out. And what I realize now is that I just wasn't mentally prepared to work at all. So I pretty much spent an entire year trying to work through mental issues. And so one day after leaving one of my jobs, I called my mom and I said, I need to find a career. She told me to look on the Ramsey County website and that she would help me find something. We ended up coming across the Young Adult Career Academy and did the application process. Honestly, that was my first interview where I was actually just being myself. Usually I just ran through the motions, said what they tell you to say, but that time I actually thought that I didn't get the internship because of that, but that was the opposite. So I met everybody. I really liked the experience, being able to go all around the county and learn different positions that you would never hear about in school. Usually it's just, college, McDonald's, and maybe construction. But yeah, they made sure that I was taken care of. They made sure that I was one of the people who needed clothing, mainly winter clothing, because I just came back from Houston. But yeah, I needed winter clothing. I needed a bus card, gas card, and so now that I'm almost done with my internship, I actually work here at the courthouse right now, and that's it.
I think this is where I turn it back over to you, right, Bling?
Yeah, we're open for questions or comments.
Commissioner Motz-Castillo.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And it's so good to see you, Amir. It was so fun to have lunch with you when we gathered. And I remember noticing how excited, I think you were working at Parks and Recs there at that time. And you were talking about how you were loving Parks and Recs and you had never had the opportunity. So it's really great to see that you're still in this program and that we're able to do this work. This team and the work that you all have laid out here is really a model for the rest of the county. And as we've been working through other workshops and other departments, I really hope that we can lift this up because it's possible, right? It's possible because you've looked and said, here's where we're not doing a good job, and owning that, and then really putting in the effort. And I think that's the difference of, having the chance to be successful and to make sure that we're diversifying our workforce, but also, Elijah, I joined the military because my choice was college and the military. And just so you know, I'm not really good with authority either. But it was okay, right? I mean, I was the same way. And so I think your story is relatable for so many people is what's the opportunity? And now, Amir, you probably know more about the county than most of our employees, right? Because we often get hired and then we stay in our role and we know our department, we might know a little bit of other things, but having that opportunity to really explore the depth and breadth of what the work is that we do here. And so as you've started this program, of course we want it to go even further in different opportunities, or even if you do it by themes or flares where people think they might be in human services and do a project like that. I think this is really a great opportunity, and I just wanted to say kudos to a great team, to great partnerships, and great people that we're hiring.
Commissioner McGuire and then Commissioner Franklin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really great to hear your story. I'm just so excited for this whole program, excited for you and the people that are able to be a part of it. Yeah, I can think of a lot of people who would really benefit from this, that everyone could benefit from knowing more about what the county does. My question is, did we get a lot of people that wanted to do this? Like how many, this is a capacity issue for us too, as a resource issue. Like how many interns can we have? Because I'm guessing there's a lot of opportunity for expansion here. So that's one question, but my other question is, so then all these interns that successfully made it through the program, are they gonna be now hired by the county, or do you go through an application process now with departments and what their openings are, or how, just give me the next step.
Yeah, Commissioner McGuire, I can take the first swing at your two questions. So in terms of just resourcing and the expansiveness, these programs are very intense. They take a lot of work, and they do, have a budget, not necessarily more than other workforce programs, but, they take resourcing. In the past, we've tried to figure out how to fund that through our existing federal funds, but, with the ARPA money, we've been able to be more flexible, partnering with the city as well. I do think there's even a desire for some of this out in the suburban communities. I've actually had several conversations with the city of Roseville. They, like other communities, are trying to diversify, and it's actually to all our benefit. I just hope folks know that as we bring people into the public sector academy and exploration, they could end up in a variety of places. They could end up with Met Council. They could end up at the state. Rising tides raises all boats here, and this is one of those really good examples of that. And so, any expansion would take, some resourcing and we are trying to double in the next cohort. So we'll have 18 coming through the next go around, while we continue to support the original group as well. And then in terms of the original group right now, as Christy and Elijah alluded to, we're working closely with NOE to help them do an extended internship. So we're continuing to fund an internship for all of them. They got to pick where in the county they wanted to engage. And so, like Amir stayed with property management, he's gonna have to work with their team to figure out how he can get to those min quals if he doesn't meet them, I don't know, to figure out where he could lie, but we wanna help support that. And that's where that conversation about the apprenticeship or on-the-job training comes in, right? Like in this internship, I've really offered to the young people that if there's training that you need while you are working as an intern with us, we'll make sure you try to get that if it's reasonable that we can make that happen. And so we'd love to keep all of them. We continue to work with HR. Again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of wheels, right, that have to all turn in the right direction. And one of them is HR, and we have to make sure that the pathway in for those young people to be able to get an interview is something that can be prioritized as we go forward.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Franklin.
Okay, I have three things. First one's a data nerd question. How many staff do we have in these departments?
Oh, you guys can do that.
Parks and Recreation has 94.63.
Right.
75.
Yeah.
135.
Excellent. When I look at these numbers, sometimes I just, like, we're gonna go for a 1% higher in 2023. But you've got around 300 folks, right? Right? And then we've got turnover of maybe 10%. So you've got 30 openings. 1% would be 3 out of those 30. You'll probably do better than that, right? So really thinking about what are the numbers, what do we think turnover is gonna happen? Can we really set a more challenging and achievable goal than 3 out of 30, right? I think you can. And I really honestly had no idea the numbers. Sometimes we'll see a number like this where it's 1%. It's like, well, you've only got 6 people. So how are you gonna get 1% higher? That's like mathematically impossible. So just as you're thinking about those numbers, I want you to push it further just in terms of what are we actually looking at in terms of those numbers. I want to give some props on the supervisory training you mentioned, Ling, because that was one of the things that was popping into my head is what are we doing to train our current existing managers and helping them to lead across difference, because that's one of the issues if you're in the interview panel and you're someone who's unable, still thinking, hey, I just don't know if they're going to fit with the team, right? You need to train them before they go into the interview room, interviewing folks. And then you want to make sure that once you get them in the door, we're not losing people because they're in a culture of microaggressions and inability to lead across different cultural difference. So props there, keep going with that. I think that's critical to any sort of efforts in this regard. And then finally, leaning in on this career academy work. Just yes, more, I love that we're expanding it. What can we do as a county? We are all county commissioners, we have all campaigned, and we've known that 90% of our job is explaining what a county commissioner does and what county government is, because nobody knows, right? And so can we also, coordinate with schools and go to school career days and be like, here's what county government does, just things to expose folks to that. In terms of getting folks in the door, can we add Career Academy as an alternative job minimum qualification? This is something we did at the state of Minnesota is, if you want to be in a supervisory or manager position, you've got to have, 5 years leadership, whatever. But there are a lot of folks that's like, okay, well, I got to go leave to do that. So they've got the Emerging Leaders Institute, they've got other leadership development teams, and that was put in as an alternate minimum qualification. Like, look, you haven't done that. That's going to get people in the door. And you talked about the Band-Aid, and we got to go farther down the list. Doesn't mean you have to hire someone. It just gets them in the door to sit down and have that conversation. And sometimes that's half the battle in government jobs. And even if you don't get that job, then you're on that hiring manager's radar for when that next job comes. That is how I got hired at the state. I finally got in, didn't get picked. The manager asked me to apply again. And then I didn't even get in the loop on their band. And I had to go back to the hiring manager and say, hey, I did try and they didn't get me in. She got me in, I got hired, right? And then 4 years later, I was leading the team. So how do we get them in the door? And can we go to HR and say, look, we're doing all this work. You guys know what jobs these folks are viewing and where you'd want to see them come back in. Put it as an alternative, as a minimum qualification. Hey, if you've done that, yeah, you've got the minimum qualifications. Let's interview you.
County Manager O'Connor,
Thanks.
wanted to speak to this.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Fredlin. Yes, on the parts about experiential piece. I just want to expand. It's not just the public sector pathways. We're talking about finance fellows. We have other management fellows across the. We have a variety of programs at this point that have been built up. And this is a spot where in our legislative platform, I'm not going to say there needs to be a legislative fix, but it's a spot where HR is looking at all this right now. And I believe that we all agree, like we need to find a way to count that piece. There's a part of the Ramsey County specific statute where we need to make sure it can count as the right type of qualifying employment under the 363 statute. I don't know that we have an issue there. I just want to make sure and flag that. And if we do, we need to go to the Capitol and we need to ask for that to be changed in terms of the why. And you can go testify and tell the story you just told. But regardless of that, I agree with you that it needs to be a part of it, and that's a conversation that we continue to have. And I just want to say it's more broad than just this program. We have a number of these programs that are seeing similar types of successes and results.
County Manager, Madam Chair, I do have one thought that, I know City of St. Paul's considering if a minimum qualifications are met, which is different than the scenario you indicated. There is conversation that if you participated in a workforce program, either through the county, city, right track, any of these, right, that we would give you an interview. And I do think that is a really nice gesture on behalf of the county, is to get people just even that interview experience. I know Amir said, that was a very positive experience for him, and we could build up our ability to sort of open that door, hopefully, in a different way. I mean, assuming you meet min quals, how can you actually get an interview? And I think that's something we might want to consider and continue seeing what our city partner does too, so that we can have some parity there.
Okay. Commissioner Moran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Commissioner Beck, give a little ditto. And so I just, Amir, congratulations. Keep being you. You the best you. We started off this workshop. I was looking at the data, the graphs, and a little despair, and what I was looking at here, especially within the parks and recs and public works, diversifying those two entities. I think we can get there, we can do it. And then, I went on to look at the Equity Action Circle that was created. I think as individuals, we only know what we know, right? And we only know based on our environment that we are a part of and how we came up and what that looks like. And so what, as I see here and what you have learned and what I have learned in the value of diversifying who's at the table, who's making decisions, who's part of the decision-making process, and what that looks to really capture how we can work towards a more diverse and equitable, whether it's a workforce or a society or however we want to frame that. It takes diverse voices and experiences and representation. And I think racial diversity is a big part of that. And so, Madam Chair mentioned the importance that, what we saw happening within the Equity Action Circle and the takeaways and the creation of the Public Sector Academy really is a roadmap, a model that we can use at Ramsey County within all departments. I want to say it's a model for the rest of the state that can be utilized to create more and better outcomes in diversity. I've always said to people as we look at the disparities that we see here in the state of Minnesota, and surely in Ramsey County, and that we highlight it and we talk about it over and over again, which I'm just tired of talking about the disparities, because the disparity is not the fault of the people who are a part of that disparity. It's about the systems that continues to do what has always done to create the disparities that we see and disparities that we have. And in the district that I represent was very diverse, low-income people. I've never, ever came across anyone to say, I just want to depend on the county. I want the county just to take care of me. People really want to be self-sufficient. They really want to be able to take care of themselves. And they are adults, they want to take care of themselves and their family. But we have to create those pathways for that to happen. I mean, really, I don't care who you are and how, degree of education you have or not have, they really want to be able to take care of themselves and be a part of society, contributing to society. And so I am really impressed with the measures, takeaways, right, that really talks about how do we eliminate the barriers. And I know in the state of Minnesota, I'm sure in Ramsey County, we want to feel that we have these high expectations and we are at this high level of, everyone needs to meet those measures, but they have, but we can do that in different ways. And what we see here in the takeaways, I highlighted, working through the barriers to hiring. It's a map, it's a roadmap to how we can do that. And it talks about leveraging the workforce solutions. It's the roadmap to help us to do that. Because I do believe that we can get better numbers for the parks and recs. That I do believe we can get better numbers for public works, and we can continue to elevate the property management pieces of this. But, and there have been a roadmap that has been set for us that we can, I think at Ramsey County, that we can tap into to get a more diverse body of representation in Ramsey County. And I'm looking at it, and I hope that we can continue to look at it throughout the many different bodies within Ramsey County to really make what we talk about a reality. Because the proof is always in the pudding, or how the pudding is really going to taste at the end of the day, right? And at the end of the day, it's what we do, not how we talk about it, but the results of what we see. And so the Public Sector Academy, awesome, awesome, awesome. And as we worked through this, it was nothing more powerful, more visual for me to make me smile at the end of the day is to see these badges at the end with these folks who got jobs, right, at Ramsey County. And that makes me smile, that makes me happy. And it also allows me to know that we can do this and there's a roadmap to help us do this. But we have to be open to that process, and I am very excited that we have a county here in Ramsey County that I consistently hear that we are working towards that. So that makes me happy as a county commissioner too. But thank you.
Commissioner Jean.
Wonderful. I will just echo the comments that my colleagues have made here today too, just about where we're going, and also about the potential for expanding this, and that it's needed. And Amir, kudos to you for listening to yourself about what you need to succeed and for taking a chance on yourself. And what as I've listened to your story and others around the table here, is about those relationships, about people who really care for each other, that invest in each other. And I think that's the approach that we need to take. And adding that on to, like, for our supervisors or like leadership within the county, is that, are we being intentional about investing in leaders of color? And are we making that time? And it's not always just about resources. It's about our time too. Like time, like that's the number one resource that we can never get back, right? It's our time. Are we using that time to invest in leaders of color? And are we creating that type of environment for leaders of color to thrive? So, Commissioner Fretham, just with what you had mentioned already, is just, we need to make sure that our leadership is setting that environment up, and also valuing the different types of contributions that shows up. The other part is, as we're talking about aligning talent attraction, retention, and promotion, I'm glad that we're lifting that part up to Director McCabe with what you had said about, are they moving to different positions? I think that's something that we need to look more into as well and keep track of. The other part is, I guess my real question is just, how do we expand this? Like, how can we expand this? Because we're talking about like 16, 18 for the next part, but can we partner across different, like I've heard the city of St. Paul is in there, but can we start including in the private sector? What about the different colleges and universities, right? Like, we are very rich in that in Ramsey County with different colleges here too. And so I would say that's a path to also for recruiting and also supporting folks.
Yeah, Commissioner Zhang, thank you for your feedback and comments. We certainly can look into our American Rescue Plan resources and continue to expand this project as we're able. We actually are working on, learn and earn programs, which will be soon to be announced, of, a variety of sectors that are happening within the county, including new to us for a workforce program and entrepreneurship pathway for workforce development for a knowledge-based and skills-based economy, but healthcare, manufacturing, IT, and more. And certainly this is one of them. This is one of those key things, that is part of that package. And I appreciate the interest of other departments. And again, I'll just kind of end with that first part that I started with. We're treating the county like we treat all employers. Employers that want to work with Workforce Solutions, we build an inclusive sort of action plan with you. And then we hold ourselves accountable, because that's how we decide to keep meeting. And if things start to fall off, we say we have a lot of people to work with and we'll come back when you're a little more ready, right? But we're trying to build our toolkit. And it takes a lot of different pieces. I mean, I just want to be clear about the supervisory training. That is not something internal to the county. That's something we're doing for all employers, really aimed at small and medium-sized employers. And we're a large employer. We need to invest in some of these things to train our own staff as an organization, right? We're trying to support the other organizations in Ramsey County as well who are hiring diverse young people. And that training's going to be, what I anticipate will be excellent. It's actually written by young people themselves. And so they've had those experiences of what have been frustrating around workplace culture, communications, conflict resolution. So we're working with World Youth Connect, and they're designing the training and we'll be delivering the training. So it's a little different than what's in our own HR department around training, but certainly another complementary thing in the ecosystem as we support employers. But I would look forward to helping expand this project. Again, it's not one of our more expensive projects, I will say. There's a lot of things that cost slightly more money, but having that flexible money for Workforce Solutions allows us to do this type of thing. So.
Well, and I'd like to kind of wrap things up here, but I have to tell you that, as was pointed out, this isn't the only program that we have that is similar. It's just what the focus is on. Director Becker, before she became our director and was with Vadnais Heights Economic Development Corporation, actually started a program with the high schools in manufacturing. That was the first iteration, and then we kept expanding that to different areas. So the partnerships with high schools, the partnership that we have with St. Paul College, on the financial side of things, there are a number of different programs. Doesn't seem like the right word, but that's what it is, where we're doing different outreach in different ways, and with the private sector and now with the public sector, looking within as well. So there are a lot of opportunities for expansion. And the fact of the matter is, we talk about all of these, but they're all relatively recent. So we can build on, as we have success, we figure out what we need to do better and learn from the participants. In most cases, that's where we learn on, okay, what do we need to do next? And so I think we have some real opportunity. I have to tell you, this morning, including this workshop, has been so uplifting and so hope-inspiring. And it's not that I didn't have hope before, I did. But it just seems like we're taking, the baby steps have finally turned out to be, kind of leaps and bounds as we're going forward, whether it's at the legislature or in projects like this, where we're affecting, and the whole point of public service is improving people's lives. And that's what we're hearing about here today. And to me, it is very hope-inspiring and inspiring. And I just want to say one last thing, and that is, Mary, you have no idea how many people are intimidated by us. We know we're not intimidating, but I know that we have had seasoned staff that have told me after they made a presentation to the county board that they were so scared. You did fabulous. So I didn't want to say that as you were doing it, because you probably would have gone, wait a minute, maybe I was supposed to be nervous about this. But you were true to yourself, and you did a fantastic job, and really bringing it home, what is it we're doing here? Yeah. And this is really great information. I think we've had a few questions about, okay, how can we expand and where can we expand? And I know that the folks sitting around this table are on the same plane as that. We need to make sure that we're doing more. And and kudos to staff that have brought this forward from many different departments. In this particular case, the 3 that are here, but there are others that are very involved in this as well and very committed to this. So, are there any other comments by anyone as we wrap this up?
Just one
County Manager
connection
O'Connor.
back, Madam Chair, from the historical side of where we see the work take hold, and the reference to there's been references to the Equity Action Circle throughout. But
yes.
This was something that was stood up during COVID. This shows also to the new commissioners, you've heard and seen our racial and health equity administrators over the past couple of weeks, and this was something that was their brainchild during COVID as a way to develop on-the-ground connections, and we've had many different leaders be a part of that table as we formulated the work. But this is one tangible example of that, and it wasn't as though they approached the county and said, we have the same level of concern everywhere, or we have the same level of misunderstanding about opportunities everywhere. These were areas that got highlighted in those conversations, and that's partly why you see the focus and attention here today. And so it's really good to see the discipline of thinking about our work differently and who we engage with, hearing people, and then finding ways to make that a part of the work going forward. And I give credit to all of you. And we have more work to continue to do. We're not at the end of this journey by any means, but it's a big step forward.
Okay. There being no further business, we are adjourned.